Welcome to Unit 7, and as you look at the topics that we're going to deal with in this unit, you might say, well, what the heck do those three things have in common? And I think that's a legitimate question. The reason that we put these together is because there are times when the industrial hygienist will have to touch on each of these three things, and of course, depending on the organization and the particular work activities in that organization, the industrial hygienist might play a major role in some of these. But we're going to talk about three different things. We're going to start off by talking about thermal stress first, and we'll focus on the aspect of heat stress as an example of thermal stress. We'll then look a little bit at ergonomics and then biological hazards. So let's just talk about each of those very, very quickly. So thermal stress, and again, we're going to look at heat stress, but remember, there is another extreme, cold stress, where we talk about terms like hypothermia and so forth. So depending on your geographical location, you as an industrial hygienist may have to deal with either or both of these. But I would say that in the United States, that heat stress is probably more commonplace in terms of an occupational health challenge than, say, cold stress. So we're going to have you read up on heat stress. There's a lot of information in your textbook that is not in the assigned reading, so we're just going to give you the bare essentials. And the thing that you'll want to focus on and try to understand is this idea of balancing heat and how the body does that, and how the ambient environment and how our metabolic activities weigh into that. So it's a balancing act, and much like we told you with the natural defense mechanisms of the body does a pretty darn good job of balancing heat load, but it can be overdone, and that's when you start getting into things like heat stroke, heat syncope, and so forth. So I think spending a little time with heat stress will really benefit you a lot. And again, as we've said, your text is going to be a wonderful reference for you should you have to dig into this in more depth. So that's heat stress. Ergonomics, I can't think of a more commonplace topic for not just necessarily an industrial hygienist, but for the safety professional in general. And in fact, many other disciplines touch on ergonomics, especially, for example, engineering. Industrial engineers take specific training in ergonomics and many times are called in to help solve a problem with ergonomics. My feeling about ergonomics is very, very simple. You don't have to look very far to find an ergonomic activity or incident. So for example, people that are in offices and have administrative positions, sometimes when we encounter people with those types of occupations, they say, you know what, safety really doesn't apply to me because my job really isn't that dangerous. Well, I would like you to consider the fact that carpal tunnel syndrome, as an example of a repetitive stress injury, is something that's very commonplace. So I would argue against that, and I'd say, you know what, there are things here in the office that can impact you, if not controlled, and impact you for the rest of your life if left unchecked. So definitely many, many examples of ergonomics. The other big thing that we think about that we've all heard about would be something as simple as safe lifting techniques, certainly an ergonomic topic. And I can't quote you the source, but a lot of times this statistic is quoted that 80% of us at some point in our lives will experience some type of back pain that is debilitating to some degree. And you know what? I think from my own experience and the experience of, say, my family members, my colleagues at work, I think that statistic is probably pretty close to being accurate. So you think of something as simple as lifting, whether it be at home or at work, and the potential that it has to cause an injury. We might call it a quality of life injury. For those of you that have suffered back aches and back strains, you certainly know that it limits your mobility, limits the things that you can do, and so it can be a big deal for us. So bottom line, ergonomics, very, very important for the industrial hygienist to understand, but recognize that you might have a safety professional or you might have an engineer that you would be working with to solve these ergonomic type problems. So I think you're going to enjoy that material. The last topic, biological agents or biological safety, in my view of all the things that we've talked about during this course, it kind of fits in the same category as radiation safety. What I mean by that is that biological safety really is very, very technical. And you would not expect an industrial hygienist, if they were going through, say, a normal college curriculum for getting an industrial hygiene undergraduate degree or even a master's degree, you would not expect the IH to have a lot of extensive training and education in the world of biological agents. And so people that are involved in this discipline tend to come out of, say, the health sciences. So, for example, you might have a microbiologist or an immunologist individual that wants to branch off into occupational safety, and they could pick up biological safety very, very easily given their background in microbial agents. So still, it's good for you to be exposed to this, because this idea of bloodborne pathogens, things that are in our blood that can cause diseases, can manifest themselves in some very common situations. And the one that you're going to read about in the written lecture and some in the textbook is a situation where you, for example, come across an individual that needs first aid. They've been injured. It could be a car accident. It could be sitting at a restaurant and someone has a medical episode, or they start choking or something like that. And so all of a sudden, with something as simple as assisting somebody that needs first aid or medical attention, you now find yourself faced with some of the concepts that we talk about in biological safety. So good for you to know about this. The other thing that is mentioned in the lecture, which is really more of a contemporary type spin on this topic, would be the idea of biosecurity. And unfortunately, since 9/11 and terrorism, we've had to include in our discussion of terrorism, we need to include biological agents. An example might be a terrorist who would like to hurt a large number of people. And if that terrorist could successfully figure out a way to put an extremely toxic agent into the food supply somehow, whether it be during production or packaging or whatever the case may be, they could have potential to really hurt a large number of people. And in fact, there have been examples of terrorist acts where biological agents, think of anthrax, have been used to purposely hurt people. So again, it'll be good for you to have a basic understanding of viruses and bacteria and so forth under this guise of biological safety. So I think you're going to enjoy all three of these topics. They are certainly worthy of more study, and again, the amount of depth that you would go into really is going to be driven by the type of organization that you're working in, or the industrial hygienist would be working in. So with that, we'll let you get on with the material and enjoy thermal stress, ergonomics, and biological hazards.